Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to Thrive, Not Just Survive. I hope that you have had a wonderful week. Now, I am so excited because today we actually have a doctor in the house. I wanted to bring somebody on that could shed some light on some different things that are going on. And this is a really dear friend of mine I met a couple of years ago through my book journey. And she is in California. Coming from there, it's 3 hours behind, I think. So it's quite early for her where she's at. But she's been so kind to agree to this interview so she can shed some light for us on health and wellness. And particularly today, I want to ask her a very specific question on how do we keep safe if we are going out. So without further ado, let me bring Dr. Cheryl on and introduce my very special guest to you. Hi, Cheryl. How are
Hey,
you?
Sarah. I'm fine. How are you? So good to
I'm
see
very
you.
good. Thank you for waking up early and coming on. I know you guys have a 3 hour difference from us, or a 5 hour difference, maybe, if you're California. So I really
Yes,
wanted
ma'am.
to have you on because I've watched you on your Facebook and the different things that you do. And as a medical professional, I wanted to bring you on to answer some of these really questions that people are having as things are progressing and protocols are there for us to follow, and things are changing. Different states are opening in terms of, us engaging with the outside world again. So I wanted you to maybe
Right.
tell us first a bit about yourself and then maybe answer some questions about that. So welcome and tell us who you are.
Well, I'm Dr. Cheryl Bryantbruce, and I am an integrative concierge physician. I actually work from home, and I usually go to my clients. But at this time, with COVID-19 infections all over the place, I'm actually doing telemedicine and talking to my patients virtually, just like we are. So it's actually working very, very well. And I think that we'll see a lot more of that in the future all around. Right now, a lot of what I'm doing is talking to people about how to keep safe from COVID-19. And one of the most important things to remember as we're starting to talk about opening back up and people getting back out is that we still need to practice social distancing. Just because we're no longer sheltering in place doesn't mean that we shouldn't be social distancing as much as possible, because we have not reached the peak on these infections, and we'll see a lot more of them, particularly as people start to get out and about. So we need to remember to social distance. The other really, really important thing to remember above all is to continue washing our hands and using the hand sanitizers. Do the things that we've been doing, not shaking hands, not touching other people. If you do have cold symptoms, sneezing into your sleeve, don't sneeze into your hand, because then you're going to touch all sorts of other things if you don't immediately sanitize and wash your hands. So sneeze into your sleeve so that you're not sneezing out into the air and spreading things.
That's
The
so.
other thing that
Sorry, just on this, like, I know these are like common, like people think it's common sense, right? That we would know this,
Yes,
but the whole idea
yes,
is to really take this as a conscious learning that we need to make sure that we're all adhering to, right? Because sometimes you think
yes,
like, oh yeah, that
absolutely.
makes sense. But when it's actually happening, especially if we just have our common colds or things like that, to just be very mindful.
Right. And the other thing that I kind of want to say to people is, don't just write it off as a common cold. I hear people saying, "Oh, it's allergies. It's just a cough. I always have a cough. I have a cold." If you have symptoms, don't dismiss them. Pay attention. And if they're anything more than a little bit unusual, if there's anything different about them at all, or if they persist for very long, then you need to go think of being tested. You have to remember that 80% of the people who contract this are very mild or asymptomatic. So if you start to have sniffles, a cough, especially if you're around older people or somebody who's immunocompromised, do the right thing and go ahead and check in with a facility and find out if you need to be tested. The tests are available now. So it is important not to just dismiss any symptoms at this time. And I want to remind people that not everybody has all of the same symptoms. You know, people think about the fever and the difficulty breathing, but not everybody has those symptoms. And a lot of people are having gastrointestinal or stomach symptoms. I had a patient call in yesterday, or the patient's wife called in. Patient's 93 years old, and within the past month, he's had 3 major episodes of vomiting that they initially wrote off as a food poisoning, but now we've had 3 occurrences, and this is not a man with a sensitive stomach, and he just kind of feels weak, and he's had a little bit of weight loss. It's time to go in and get checked. You can't just write it off as a sensitive stomach. So if there are symptoms, people need to be checked. We need to, I know that it's not comfortable and nobody thinks it's fun, but to think about protecting others as well as ourselves. So it is important to wear the mask, especially as we're now talking about opening things up. It becomes even more important to wear the mask. And it's an interesting thing because a friend told me, and I haven't been able to verify this yet, that some of the states are now restricting what are called the N95 and N99 valved mask and recommending that the general public only use the paper surgical mask. It's got a lot of people worried. But the interesting thing about that is if 100% of the people wore surgical masks, then we could eradicate this because, and I'm going to talk about the mask, but the surgical mask in general is not designed necessarily to protect you from infection unless someone just kind of spits all over you. It'll protect you from that. But biological particles, it's not really designed to protect you from that. It's designed to protect a patient from the surgeon who's operating on them, to make sure that the surgeon is not breathing bacteria into a wound and infecting a wound. So one would think, well, then, I'm not going to be protected. But the thing is, if every single person is wearing a mask, preventing them from spreading the infection, whether they know they have the infection or not, then nobody can get the infection because it's been prevented. So that's one thing to consider. If yours is one of the states that says we're not going to let you wear these valved masks, don't have a freak out and say, oh, well, I'm not going to be protected. The other thing about the surgical or paper mask is that according to research that was done by Edinburgh University, they tested to see how effective the various different masks were. And the reason that that's interesting is because in general, all of the masks protect from particles that are about 0.2 microns, or actually closer to 0.3 microns. But this particular virus is only about 0.1 micron. So that means that it's smaller than any of these masks should really be able to protect. But they do offer some protection. And even when looking at just a surgical mask, which isn't designed to protect that way, they found that it was 63% effective.
Wow.
So it's a reasonably good mask for the purposes that we're using it for, especially when we're trying to protect other people from getting infected.
So this is why I think it's so important to talk about masks, right? As we are now maybe going out. Like for us, I'm in Canada, so it'll be a little bit different than what the United States is doing in terms of different states and stuff like this. But we're still, trying to follow all, not trying, well, most people are really looking at the protocols and doing what they can do, right? So I've seen a lot more people at grocery stores having their masks on. So what I want to talk to you about is, how do you properly use this mask so that you can at least know that there's some sort of protection and you're doing it properly, as opposed to, just winging it, right?
Yes. Yes. And that's kind of one of those pet peeves that's really making me crazy right about now, because I see, I'd say even about 50% of the people are not wearing them correctly. And what I'm, the most common thing I'm seeing is, this is a very good mask. This is what's called an N99 mask. This mask itself will screen out approximately 99% of particles that come in, but only if I wear it correctly. And I see people walking around the store. The most ridiculous one I see is people who are walking around the store with their mask on like this, hanging around their chin. A mask around your chin protects you against absolutely nothing at all. So it's worthless. And to just have it hanging around your chin and periodically do this with it is not really useful either, because the virus particles can't tell when you put the mask back up and you take it back off. The other most common way that I see people wearing a mask that's really pretty ineffective is like this, up under their nose, or just barely partially covering their nose to give themselves airspace around it so that they can breathe better, because they feel a little claustrophobic in the mask, or they feel like they can't breathe. If they feel like they can't breathe, it's probably not properly seated, or it's not properly fitted. But if it is only partially covering the nose, or it's beneath the nose, your mouth is covered, but you're still breathing through your nose. So you're still just as unprotected as if you never put a mask on at all. So the proper way to wear the mask is to fully cover the mouth and the nose, and to make sure that all of the spaces around the mask are sealed. So this is what a mask looks like when it's properly fitted. Now,
So that is, I mean, that's for, you've got a mask here that's an N99, which most people won't have access to, I would assume, right? So then can you show us, I know you're going to go through the different masks, but I want to really kind of give people the idea of whatever they have, how to sort of use it and make sure that they have it sort of on them, right? Like if they're going out, make sure they're carrying a mask with them.
Yes, yes, yes. If they're going out, they should make sure they're carrying a mask with them. And it doesn't matter what kind of mask. As a matter of fact, somebody runs out of the house, they're getting ready to run to the store, and they're halfway to where they're going, and they're like, oh, shoot, I forgot to put my mask in the car. It is not catastrophic. Pull the shirt up over the face and just make sure that the nose and the mouth are covered. It isn't going to protect you 100%, but it is some filtration. And again, if you're social distancing, it shouldn't be that much of a problem. Now, in terms of that, mask or no mask, one thing I do want to say about social distancing is we say social distancing of 6 feet, or approximately 1.2 meters. That is only if you're doing what you and I are doing, sitting still or standing still. In the event that you're walking and you're not walking side by side with someone, if you're staggered and someone's walking behind you, or someone's on the sidewalk walking in front of you, you have to be more than 6 feet apart. You need to actually a little more than double that distance, because there's something called a slipstream when we're moving. And the best example that I can give you is when you see the jets flying and you see the stream of moisture particles behind them, or if you've ever been on a dusty road and the truck goes by and leaves you in a cloud of dust, and you're waiting for that dust to fall out of the air, and it seems like it takes forever. And it does, because it's in the slipstream and it's just kind of flowing back towards you. Same thing happens when you're walking. You create a draft or a slipstream, and particles that are in the air are floating back from that slipstream. And so they move further and they move quickly. So if you are 6 feet behind someone who's walking and they happen to be coronavirus positive, guess what? You're walking right through their slipstream. Now, if you're one of those people who's out trying to get your exercise and you're running, that distance increases to almost 35 feet. So that's substantially further. And if you're going by someone cycling along at a pretty good clip, it increases to 65 feet. So it's a big distance. And what's important about that is people who are walking alone tend not to wear their mask. They either pull them down or they put them away. But if you think about it, someone was out there cycling and they've left a 65-foot slipstream. They're already long gone before you came out and started your walk. You never saw them cycle by. They're COVID-19 positive. They've left a 65-foot slipstream that you are now happily walking through without even realizing you're being exposed. Someone who's driving in a car and they're looking out the window, they're breathing out the window. Car is moving a lot faster than a bicycle. Guess what? There's a slipstream created. So that's a reason that you need to keep that mask on, because you don't know if you're being exposed or not.
That is like, I've not heard that, and I think that's so powerful to even understand why, right? Like, these precautions are in place, but once we understand consciously, logically, whatever it is, right? Once you have that knowledge, it's so much easier than when we go out to say, this is why it's so important to have that mask on, right? I didn't know about this. So I think that's an amazing thing that you've brought forward, because I think this knowledge can help everybody. So now, if you can maybe guide us through the different masks, and just kind of so people understand, right, that these are the different ones. If they're hearing N95 and N99, and what does it all mean?
Okay, well, to start out, we all basically know what the paper surgical mask looks like, and I don't have one of those here with me, so we won't show that one. But it's basically a paper or a cloth pleated mask. Now, the next mask up from that is an N95, or if it's coming from Britain, it's a KN95. And these masks, for the most part, look like this one. And they are layers of fabric, usually between 3 to 5 layers of fabric that are pressed, and they filter out about 95% of the particles, the particulate matter that comes through them. This one is just a basic flat one. They also have molded ones, however, and you may see some of these N95s that will have a valve. Now, people are wondering what the purpose of the valve is. And what the valve is it actually allows you to exhale the carbon dioxide, because when we inhale, we breathe in oxygen, and the body uses that, and then we exhale carbon dioxide. Well, if you have a mask on and there's no exhale valve, then that carbon dioxide kind of gets stuck in the mask, so you're breathing back your own carbon dioxide. When you have the valves in place, as you breathe out, they kind of pop open and let the carbon dioxide out. They also let out the moisture, so they're more comfortable. You don't have that kind of moist air surrounding your nose and mouth. So you'll see some of these oftentimes, if they're N95s, they'll have a little valve in the center and there'll be a molded cup. But other than that, it's basically the same mask, and it screens out about 95% of the bacteria. Now, there is a difference between an N95 and an N95 surgical mask. An N95 surgical is even a little bit higher grade. It still screens out approximately 95%, but That particular mask is a valved mask, and it also has filters so that as you're expiring, it prevents the bacteria from going out. They're caught in the filter.
Okay.
So your air is filtered in and your air is filtered out, and that's called an N95 surgical mask. The next mask up from that is the one that I originally started out with, and this is what's called an N99. And the N99, which has a filter in the inside of it, and this one has valves to let the air out. And the N99s actually filter out 99% of the particulate matter that they're designed to filter out. So most people are going to have somewhere between a surgical mask and an N99. You'll see the pictures of people in the ICUs with the full gear on, the jumpsuit, and they have something that looks like this. And what this particular one is a P100, but what makes it different is these big pink things that make you look like an alien on the side. And what those are is these are HEPA filters.
Okay.
HEPA filtration is the highest level of filtration, and it filters out approximately 100%. It's 99.7%, so almost 100%, up to 100%, and that's why it's P100. So obviously, this is the highest of the filtration systems without going to a full respirator thing.
Right.
And this is actually called a respirator because of these. But if you haven't gone to the big head thing that makes you look like Darth Vader, then that's the highest level that you're going to be at. Does everybody need one of these? Absolutely not. If you're out on the street, you shouldn't have one of these. Right now, because we have worldwide need and we have people who are really exposed to the virus, your medical personnel, your first responders, they're really exposed to the virus. And I think one of the things that we need to consider is this virus is contagious, but about 80% of the people are going to do very well and recover from it. Most people are not immediately coming down with the virus. It's not as infectious as some other things, like the Spanish flu just took out millions of people. I think 1.2 million was the number, and it did it quickly within 6 months. It was highly, highly contagious, highly infectious. We have some other things that are more infectious than this particular disorder. But if you are having multiple exposures, for example, your medical personnel who's working with people who have COVID-19, your immune system is being overwhelmed doing battle against it. Or if you're someone who's at home taking care of somebody who is positive for the virus, then your system has the potential to be overwhelmed. Those are the times when you're going to want to wear a higher filtration mask. Aside from that, most people will do fine with the surgical mask.
So can we talk about, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but can we talk about like, so in Canada, we've seen like people are sewing masks just because there's such a shortage. And so, you know, whatever it is that people can do to help others or, you know, within their communities, they're making the masks at home, right? So again, you said some protection is better than no protection. Covering it properly to make sure that at least there's some sealing going around in terms of your nose and your mouth. But can we talk about, you know, so that people don't think, well, I might as well not wear it because it's not going to work, if like homemade masks, right? Can we talk a bit about, even if we're making them at home, is there maybe something that we could use or do to make it a little bit more, you know, usable, not usable, but just better protection?
Well, one of the things for people who are making homemade masks, who are sewing the mask, using multiple layers of material. And one of the things that I recommend is material has certain what they call grain, and that the fibers run a certain way in the weave. And so what I recommend is alternating the direction of the fibers so that they're catching different areas. Um, that is one way to increase the effectiveness. And if you're making one at home, you want to have 3 to 5 layers of fabric as you're pressing them together. The other thing that you can do is to make your own homemade filter. You can make a HEPA filter. And as I said, the HEPA is the highest filtration. Your HEPA filter is not going to be as effective as this, obviously, but you can get fairly high grade filtration with your own HEPA filter in your own homemade mask. And what you can do to get one of those, a lot of vacuum cleaners have HEPA filters. Their bags have HEPA filter replacements. You also, if you go to any air conditioning store, they have HEPA filters for the air conditioning unit. You can buy a filter because they're replaceable filters. You can buy a filter and then just cut it up into lots of pieces the size of your mask. So then you also have filter replacements. So using a HEPA filter in your mask is a very good way to improve the efficacy of your mask.
Yeah, so I think that's, again, for people who are able to make them, and another really good point, right? How do you get that? And I wouldn't have thought about, obviously, the air conditioner or a vacuum cleaner, but it's just about getting that information out, making sure people understand the benefits, the effectiveness, and how we can sort of mitigate as much as we can by using whatever we can, right? So whether it's going into a store and just, if you don't have nothing and you have a scarf or your garment, you can do that, to a homemade mask, to, of course, any of the other surgical masks that we talked about. So I think this is such a key point. If things are going to be opening up soon, we're going to be maybe going out more so. So again, your points on social distancing, your points on wearing a mask and making sure that, we are covering it, even if we're around people, in front, behind, just making sure that these things are in place will probably allow us to, weather this a little bit better than if we were to go out with no protection, correct?
Yes. And there is one more thing that we can do, which people aren't talking about as much, people aren't thinking about as much. But one of the things to remember is that we have 2 eyeballs sitting in the front of our heads that are exposed. And that is another portal of entry for obtaining the infection. So one of the things that people can do, I mean, we don't have to all run around with big goggles on looking like bugs, but a lot of people like to wear their sunglasses to look cool. And this is a time when you can be as cool as you want to be. Wear your sunglasses or wear even your regular reading glasses if you need to. But it's a good idea to have something over your eyes if you're going to be in a situation where you are going to be in closer proximity to a lot of people. Like, for example, if you're going to the grocery store. Now, usually I think people look pretty ridiculous when they have their sunglasses on inside, but this is a time when I'm recommending that people wear your glasses into the grocery store. The sunglasses will offer you at least some protection.
That's awesome. You know what? I think these are amazing points. I think that you've brought a lot of very things that people can actually do. It's like sometimes you feel less empowered when you think, well, I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. But now it's like, you know what? There's things we can do, things we can support each other with, our communities or whatever it is, with knowledge. And we start with just having that knowledge, right? So we understand what we're up against. And so I really want to thank you for taking this time, coming on. And I know it's early for you, but you've given us so much to think about. And moving forward, I wish you and your family great health, and I hope you'll come visit me again via Zoom. And at some point, I would love to.
No, I plan on coming to visit you in Canada, Nasir.
Well, you don't want to come now. It's really cold, but yeah, maybe in the summer.
Yeah.
But you know what? Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it immensely. I will definitely be in touch with you, of course, all virtual for now, but I wish you a happy, blessed Friday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining me.
You as well. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Everybody. So this was Cheryl, Dr. Cheryl Bryantbruce, MD. You can check her website out at CherylBryantBruceMD.com if you want any further information. There's resources there. I want to thank you all for joining and for participating and engaging in these conversations, because I think that's one of the key elements, is to be engaged. The other thing I ask for you to do is please share this video or this interview. The reason is some people may not have been able to catch it. If you can share it, this information can help them. Perhaps they would be able to be a little bit more resourceful and get the information that they would need. So I encourage you to do that. And if you're watching this on replay, please comment #replay. I appreciate you guys being here. I love you a lot. And I will see you again Monday with another very special guest. So have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday at 10 a.m. Ciao for now.